Welcome to Sound City. I'm Soldier Shoes, where everybody empowers discussion. We are. We're not here to compare critical things to each other. And Sound City is not for critical thinking. The purpose of Sound City is to use critical thinking skills. It's to put together common sense and let everything else just fall into place. The ironic thing is that commonly, when we work with something like critical thinking skills, we keep in mind what our personal experiences are. We don't separate those conditional things from a real-time experience and what it is at the moment we're going through. We're experiencing something. And instead of evaluating our reaction therein, we tend to role play a character, or just exist, follow along. I agree. Ha 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 ha. Kiki kiki kiki. That's true. That is true. What we logically process should be brought out when we verbally share with others. And we don't bring it out. That's ironic. I don't think it's a casualty. I don't think it's a boulder. I don't think it hurts us or helps us. And it will continue to do either of those things around us until we decide on at least one of those things. That's to accept our actions, be responsible for the things we do. Of course, mom and dad taught this. Grandmother, grandfather taught them this. Great-grandmother and great-grandfather taught them to teach them this. And that great-grandmother and that great-grandfather were each on just mother's side. For father's side, there is another great-grandmother and great-grandfather. 4 individuals. That makes 16 people that taught a thing based on memory. Repetition's good. It builds our memory. Redundancy, it builds our memory. The brain works to keep us safe. That's the area I like to be comfortable with. Participating or attending various lectures and doing reading hours of reading and hours of review, as well as hours of technical study. I've come to the conclusion, and I've not went further than that we're in a serious repetition. Literature, it establishes mathematical sense within a reasonable measure compared to science, such as a beginning and an end. I'd like to see in real time the beginning and the end of any piece of literature that anybody on the face of this earth has ever read in real time. That's a demonstration or an example of something general and something common used in the context of beginning, end, as it's written. Now that's possible because writing in that way is possible. Sometimes there are those dots at the end, dot, 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 dot. That means the story is to be continued. It goes on. Furthermore, but about those ones that come to a period and that say the end, those things mean in the story there was a protagonist, someone that is faced with conflict, and there's an antagonist, someone that causes conflict. There's a climax, there's a plot, a conflict, and a resolution. That's the point of the written piece. That's the educational aspect in the art of writing, to come up with a beginning and an end. And sometimes in intervals there's a space, and before each of those spaces in a piece there will be those repetitive dots that look like a repeating decimal, if you will, at the end, not at the beginning. And that piece will continue on after that interval where there's a space where it left off. And before that author is comfortable with that piece or satisfied with that work, it will come to a period and an ending. We'll not process that story until we get to a period or the end anyway. We won't share where our role is in a critical manner or in critical time. What we're experiencing from beginning to end in any given situation with each other. But in mind, we'll go through the beginning and the end and completely be the hero the whole time, every time. Just so, this is catch 22, this is the ironic part. Just so when we are interacting with others, if there is a question we're expected to answer or our turn to share, we won't be embarrassed and we can say what's going to generally satisfy the group or be comfortable for everyone. We'll work so that we make each other happy, but ironically, we won't do a happy thing when around others. Being satisfied, okay, but when do we accept something else? How much longer do we have to survive, so to speak, as living things, if you will, as living humans? What is survival? That's an ironic question, isn't it? Questions like that. What is irony? What is sarcasm? What is a metaphor? What's logical? What's illogical? Where do I go to learn math? Where do I go to learn English? These kinds of intelligent things, they come to us as just as possible. It's up to us to be individual. I'm going to say that once again. It's up to us to be individual. Some people are going to be confused. But once again, in Sound City, we're not trying to critically think. The purpose is not to critically think. The purpose for Sound City discussion is itself a critical thinking skill. As I mentioned earlier, I read, I review, I study, I attend lectures. Critical thinking skills that I develop are not what I use for personal success, personal health, personal satisfaction, or personal acceptance, or general acceptance. That's not me being critical. That's my critical thinking skills in use that came into use to get through something that presented a critical situation to me. My resolution, and yours too, The ironic thing is the belief or idea using those things is okay because analyzing the story, it's common. The conflict or situation is common. The need to use those things is common. So common, it's possible 9 times out of 10, no one will notice the significance that a character experiences in the story from him or her own self. Things that revolve around personal health, politics, religion, education, or childhood, adulthood, survival, strategy. Words that have been created, yes, but are just words, rightfully and justly deserved and earned. Factual words. It's just so ironic. We see ourselves generally in a situation so that we can make sure we're not in a situation that's uncomfortable. But we won't see ourselves in a situation that we're in at the moment before there was a disagreement, before someone didn't agree, before things went wrong. Since things are not going wrong, we won't manifest. Until we accept being individual. Once again, some are going to be confused, but this is simple. And this as well indicates, if you will, where irony is. For those that like irony, you can get a little bit of irony out of this too. But my goal that I'm going to accomplish before this segment ends is to establish that the question, are we hindering ourselves by being logical, is just as unnecessary of a question as any other illogical question is. I exercise every morning. I had my exercise this morning. I'm in excellent posture right now. I'm not getting into irony and superstition, mythology, sarcasm, imagery, metaphors, anything poetic or even artistic, as I'm in the artistic mode of art for anyone to plainly see. I work in the studio arranging tracks, mixing, mastering, writing, recording, directing, filming, editing, you name it, pretty much. Promoting, managing, organizing, planning, scheduling, and analyzing. There's no logic in any of that. Unless, of course, we were to intervene in chronological time and simply just want to raise a question. It could be any general question, since it's already going to deal with logic. Now, that's not my personal style, but I'm aware of it. That will be done because if a person were to know everything I'm responsible for, of course, would be me going through the things in real time in my mind over and over and over in repetition and redundancy that are being raised for discussion or in question. Survival, we named some things earlier. Success, satisfaction, health, acceptance, things we are going to work on and believe we're working on in real time. That's where irony is. That's not ironic, but that's where irony is. Thinking for the greater good on things or a thing that we're going through in real time. We wouldn't know we were going through had we no chronological history, no genealogic sense, no memory. And remember, the brain works to keep us safe, not for accuracy. We totally take, if you will, what we're going through, like my posture right now, and create with it something that's ironic. Will feed a thought or a power with something that's powerful. It's how tyranny is. Someone is in a position of authority and can't find any way to use that position outside of demonstrating authority. The technical congratulations is not processing, reflecting appreciation and gratitude for those socially scientific positives that qualify an individual for a position of authority, a position of leadership, or some other positive advancement. It's common those persons usually don't stay in that position very long. And it's not because that person does not have a sense of authority or leadership or guidance verbatim, unless we look at it without being ironic and accept the terms under which we delegate someone else to serve in that position, which is that person doesn't listen to others very well. That person does not take into account the effort of subordinates towards major goals or long-term goals or big jobs. That person was thought to be able to do those things because without the position of authority, the technical person, if you will, showed those qualities. And so here we're not really dealing with that person, which is why I don't agree with dealing with irony. We're dealing with the complex of having to use what we think in real time to survive, not be ironic when it comes to sharing with others. That's why a person is delegated to serve in a leadership position or to serve in a leadership role, but will later on be taken out of that position or demoted because the person he or she is not in that position, which qualifies that person for that position, is not the person he or she is in that position, which doesn't make sense ironically. Makes logical sense. That's why this is a good discussion and a question, as we know. Same with kids. Can I go outside? Can we go outside? Yeah, but don't go by that road. Don't go in the road. Don't get in the street. Come around later on. You're too close to the street. You're almost in the road, come in some and actually stay from near the road. Stay from close to the street. Don't even get close to the road. Don't even get close to the street. Okay? In the beginning, that was the plan. But how serious things are, being ironic, inspired us to withhold that possibility, that thought, for our own processing sake, and to just say the second in nature thing instead, as it could be just as good. It's not just as good. Ironically, it's just as good. But that's what irony is all about. Something that's just as good as what the real thing is. That's not what irony means, but that's what irony is about. And I think since it's that clear, we stand a chance if we stop using it, experience it, go through it, absorb that energy. Don't compromise inertia. Why? Because you can't. Those are just words, those are art. We've got a lot of civilizational history to take into consideration in today's modern world that we do not consider from one day to the next. Here we are with an example of irony. We'll think, well, I disagree with that soldier shoes because I'm alive, I'm not suicidal. I'll be here, if it's God's will, 15 years from now. And lettuce, the vegetable, is my favorite food, and it will still be in 15 years. I'll still eat lettuce as my favorite. I've had lettuce for more than 15 years, counting, and 15 years of more lettuce, it's not outside of my range. I can get there. That's me. That's my thing. And that lettuce is going to be my lettuce too. But we're not used to things short term. We can go out long term and be up to speed. But when it comes to short term, 15 years, this is an example, 15 years of vegetable lettuce craving, if you will, means what? Not what it meant in terms of the 15 years, but in terms of the present moment, that's 15 years strong. What does that mean? In a lame term, teach us about lettuce. One thing, two things, three things. You know all of the things there are to know about the one vegetable lettuce. If you've been eating it 15 years consecutively. And furthermore, you can, if you have a goal to accomplish, that's to eat lettuce for 15 years. Now, total, you're working with 30 years experience, flat. Not 30 years of eating lettuce. Lettuce and eating lettuce, those are different stories in 30 years. This is where the ironic thing comes in, and so do I, if I'm able to, and if it's safe and comfortable. "30 years looked at on a long term totally takes away whatever is going on during 30 years when it's shared with someone else. Now, doing the right thing and telling a 30 years worth of story about lettuce to someone is going to drive a point, whatever your point is, out of however many points you have, if it's more than one, directly home, if you will, to that person. Not because that person coincidentally has a craving for lettuce all the time, or because that person also has a long-term goal to enjoy lettuce for 15 years and accomplish that goal, but because simply that person's a human being and that person is aware of irony, that person is intelligent logically. Differences, okay. The thing is, are we hurt by noticing each other's differences, even if the whole purpose is so that we can come together and learn the ways we're similar? That's because when we share our differences, there's a bridge there that we cross. That's where we are already alike. That's where the things are that inspire us to come together and share our differences, establish how we're alike, what our motive is. This is a simple thing to figure out. It's going to confuse some, but it's because those decide a path of confusion. We can figure out, as sure as we have a motive to do something, that we don't have any room or time, if you will, to storytell to one another, unless we're going to tell the story exactly the way the story is that we have in mind. That's possible if, while having something in mind, we give ourselves the credit and we give ourselves the trust on our memory to utilize pure energy and see not what it is that we're evidently constructing to share with someone else. When we're alone, it's fine to be ironic. We've established that with the term irony. We know it exists. Whether the term is logical or not is out of our control. But the evidences upon which we founded or established that word, we know to not only exist, but to be out of our control unto the finding of irony. We've got to learn how to interact with each other galactically. We've got to learn how to exist no more than is necessary and sufficient for individual self, thus general survival. Surviving is not competing and winning. Like imagery, it's natural. Everyone born has already survived life. Passing through the birth canal We've survived life as we know life in understanding towards ourselves. Now I'm not alone on this. Common sense we have. And I think that's the ironic thing as we continue as a society, instead of in natural times when beyond the shadow of a reasonable doubt we're on a yes, not on possibly, not on probably, not on supposedly, and not on maybe. We work with it, and others work with it as well with us. We'll say, I hope it's not going to rain tomorrow because I've got to go take my walk. It's around the time that rain is expected according to this morning's forecast. That's throughout the week. And someone will reply, well, maybe it won't. Maybe it will. And we'll relax. Over time, over the course of a week, we'll come back to it. I sure hope it doesn't rain. I just really am kind of hoping that rain will just kind of skip over us. This area, I can walk in tomorrow. But for the moment at which that irony was delivered, we were rendered helpless because we were too not prepared for reality. The rain is rain. It's not a machine. You can't just work around possible rain. You can work around what you're planning to fit the week in time, but the rain is going to come from above, not from the top or any particular peak of any structure we can see physically. See as a physical thing. Using rain, using time, using distance, using depth, using length, using width, using cause, using effect, using day, using night, using the sense of sight, using the sense of hearing, using the sense of smell, using the sense of touch, using the sense of taste. You cannot use ironically. When you use those concepts, you have to include yourself. You have to, upon the story had been while applying your learning to your personal life experiences, evaluating your reaction to each subject, and analyzing the story to each concept with a critical lens, with an internal locus of control that's easy to muster, if you will. A growth mindset is able to understand that. A person with a strong sense of resilience can understand that. Having an intrinsic motivation makes that interpersonal intelligence a possible thing, if you will. The person that's listening to the concern about the rain and the walk is confused because logically you're saying the rain's a concern, but you're not saying the rain's so much of a concern that you're not interested in taking your walk. So since you're not directly affected by the conflict that you're presenting, the question here is, or would be on a different segment, why are you concerned? Why are you worried even? And in this discussion, why are you being ironic? Now, in order to answer that question with a justified answer, you'd have to prove what it is that rain has against your force of natural will. You have to prove that your motive logically is equivalent to the purpose for rain. Now, this is what irony is about. If you're able to do that, which you're capable of doing, then you can explain, therefore, what common sense is all about by describing the image that you have in your mind honestly. Until then, you're dealing with someone else in irony. And what purpose do you have when all is said and done and you're not anyone's company for the time being? It's your meanwhile. What do you have from your experiences when you are applying your learning to your personal life experiences? What is your learning? What is it that you learned? And irony here for you. That's important for society to know, because that's where everyone is in each person's respective area of ignorance until taught the correct thing. That is, have the intelligence after the ignorance. Ignorance doesn't mean dumb. Ignorance doesn't mean stupid. Ignorance doesn't mean any of those other ironic terms. Ignorance means having a lack of knowledge having lack of knowledge, not knowing. You'll be ignorant, and so will I, about anything that's unknown intelligently until we learn that thing. Then we'll be intelligent, not ignorant. And we can pass the best we can forward that information to someone. And if that person already knows that information, then there's a cancellation. But if that person prior to that didn't know that information, that person's ignorance will change to intelligence as well. You see, it happens per moment. It doesn't last 15 years or 30 years. Ignorance is a momentous thing. We go in and out of ignorance all the time. Foolishness, stupidity, or clumsiness, or simple irony and sarcasm are applications, things that could go 15, 30 years with unanswered questions. Those things are conditional, not circumstantial. Intelligence, it's circumstantial, not conditional. There's no way to control what is intelligent, because in the great cycle of life, the intelligent is the majority, and the majority rules. Remember the person in the authority position, and that was demoted and lost that position, but wasn't taken out of the ability to play an authoritative figure or an authoritative role. We've got to use irony, but here, just listen. When you see me standing here, don't put your burdens over on me. Don't assume I'm sharing your burdens with you. Don't assume that I am wanting you to share my burdens with me. Look at a person when you're ready to, and keep all of that imagery in mind whenever you feel like it. The weather, the temperature, time, distance, space, travel, depth, width, area, perimeter, circumference, mass, matter, energy. Keep it. And work with a person, adult or kid, when you're ready to. Simple. Irony won't be an issue if you do things in the time that's for you. As an individual, if you choose based on what you observe what someone else does or thinks. Be intelligent, be ignorant, but you'll be ironic with every person you interact with. And you alone will still prosper because you need these things to comfort yourself and to reaffirm your level, if you will, regarding accuracy, safety, survival, strength, weakness, health, satisfaction, acceptance, or power, motivation, locus of control, enthusiasm, grit, resilience. It goes on and on and on. Your thinking. You know, it's a choice. And sometimes it's a decision. But you can make it through those if you focus on yourself. And I'm going to talk to you the next time around. Thank you. God bless you and me. Stay healthy and enjoy the rest of your day.